All righty. It's go time, baby. You ready to kick this off, Jeremy Herrman?
Let's go.
I love it. So my name is Craig Zuber. I'm an executive business coach, and I'm here with Jeremy Herrman, who is the co-founder and CEO of ClarityNOW. He's also a business executive coach as well. Father, spouse, partner. I could probably go on and on. Is that right, Jeremy?
It's the list is getting longer each month, I feel like. But yes, all that is correct. Been in real estate for 17 years. Actually got my real estate license before I finished high school. And this is real estate. It's all I've ever done. Several different aspects of the industry, but you summed it up. That's me.
Wow. And I just looked earlier and said, you know what? I had the opportunity to actually be a partner with you for just over 5 years. It's been like 5 years and 3 months since you and your bride came into our coaching relationship. I'm like, wow, can you believe it's been that long?
You know what's funny about that is I'll never forget it. And my wife won't let me forget it either. When we first signed up for a coach, she got the assignment of who the coach was. And I was all kinds of skeptical about who this dude was. Well, who is he? How do we know if he's good? And 5 years and what you said, 3 months, 5 years and 3 months later, I think we got a good one. So we appreciate you, man. Thank you for what you've done for us.
Absolutely. I appreciate the relationship, the opportunity, and now we're here, right? So we're here to discuss basically ClarityNOW, like the business itself. What is it? The idea behind it? Where did it come from? What did you do to go basically from this idea and turn it into a business, right? Like we're going to get in today of like, what's the successes? What's the struggles? What was the significance or what's the impact? Like you name it. What are all the lessons that you learned going through this process?
Yeah, really entrepreneurship in general. I mean, this is actually the fourth business that I've started. And one thing that I think there probably isn't enough of is honest conversation about what it's like to start a business and the ups and the downs, and making that known. It's, a lot of times when you hear interviews of business owners or people that are deemed to be successful, it's just the highlight reel stuff, right? So I just want to, with you go through what the journey's been, and hopefully people can get some tips and guidance from it.
Okay. So let's do that. So you and I get into a relationship as a coach / client, basically just over 5 years ago. Right? Then how long has it been now, Jeremy, since I basically challenged you to become a coach yourself? Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. This August is 4 years. So we were together for a year and a half or so. Okay. And then you gave me a nudge / two-handed push into becoming a coach myself.
Okay.
And none of this would have came to, I mean, ClarityNOW wouldn't exist if I wasn't a coach, because it was created out of my need in being a coach. So, I mean, truly, thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Right. It's just, we're going to go to, so it's been 4 years since you've been a coach, or since you started becoming a coach, right? To, where did ClarityNOW, what is ClarityNOW? Where did it come from? So that's like, was that 3 years in the making? Is it 3.5 years in the making?
You want the backstory on it?
Sure.
Kind of what it is?
Yeah.
For those that don't know. So I mentioned this is my fourth company, and I'm sure we'll talk about, I want to talk about one of them specifically because it was a massive failure, and it was a lot of lessons came from that. But when I first became a coach, I love numbers. I love data. I like to analyze things. That's kind of how I naturally am wired. And I was expecting to have some resources and tools on how to coach. And it became pretty clear that, most of you coaches, you're all off on your own island in some regard, and creating your own tracking systems and your own hubs for your clients, right? And keeping everything organized. So I took that challenge upon myself, and I essentially just made a massive spreadsheet, and it had a bunch of, probably 20 tabs on it. Business planning, tracking, P&L, just everything that you need to run a company. So I developed it probably over 2 years with my clients. It's just new needs came up, and all my clients loved it. They were sharing it with people in their office. It was funny. I could see the shared file like just getting bigger and bigger. And I would teach business planning, and I would coach to it and teach it, and people loved it. And long story short, and this is actually kind of part of my personal journey too. It's just a funny nuance of me is my co-founder, who I am super grateful for, JB, he's my CTO. He was my next door neighbor, and he actually lived with my wife. He was engaged to his now wife, Kayla. And JB and Kayla live with my wife, Jenna. They moved in next door. And that's how I met my wife. And that's how I met my business partner. So my next door neighbor ended up becoming my wife and business partner. So anyways, Kayla and JB were over at her house. I think it was in November, a couple years ago, probably close to 3 years ago, whatever year that is. And I showed him my spreadsheet, and he was already working for a company creating portals. He's a software engineer. That's what he went to school for. And he told me he could turn it into a portal. And we just we started about a week later. So we spent just about 2 years, I would say, on nights and weekends, not getting paid. Obviously, I was still coaching and working. He obviously still had his job. I have a couple of kids. He has a kid. So we had our personal lives, but a couple nights every single week, we'd get together and just start to turn my big old spreadsheet into software. And we did it for 2 years. We just didn't quit. So until it ultimately became a product that I could throw some of my clients into it and have them help me break it for a year. And that's really what it was. Is I created a spreadsheet out of a need of coaching my clients. And I just happened to know someone that could turn it into software, into a reality. And I got really, really lucky and fortunate that he has the kind of grit and perseverance that he has to see something through for 2 years without a dime, sacrificing family time and sleep and everything it took to build it. So, I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for that. I just had the right partner.
That's incredible. So when did you, so 3 years, so that's about 3 years ago that, that discussion basically happens, right?
Yeah.
But it was that night that you guys realized maybe we should build something. Was it then?
So he's wanted to build something for a while. He's talented, and he was always been an employee, and he knows that he has the skill set to work for himself, but he never knew what to sink his teeth into.
Okay.
So he was kind of looking for an opportunity, and I had built something, and I showed it to him, and it was pretty much that night. I think that night we kind of joked about it, and a couple of days later, if I remember, we talked again and basically said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yes." And then we started. It's funny. I look back at some of the notes of our first couple sessions, and it's cool to see how far we've come. It's like a real blast from the past. But yeah, it wasn't long after that. Within a week, for sure, of him coming over that night, did we write our first line of code.
So you write your first line of code. And then what I heard you say is you had launched a couple of businesses potentially before this were all those a success?
No, one sucked.
Okay.
So there's been this, I guess this is the four. So the first one, I'm from California, and I live in upstate New York now, outside of Rochester. And I've had a business coach for my real estate career since I was, I think, 19. My business coach at the time lived in this area. And the first business was, he asked me to move to New York, move to Rochester, where I'd never been before. Didn't know anybody but him, to start a company. And it was actually the first ever ISA company. So the first one in the country. There's a lot of them now, but every single ISA company that exists today came after us. We were the first, which was cool. I mean, we kind of created that. So I was at a point in my life, and I can't really say my career yet because I was so young, but I was at a point in my life where it's actually funny. My stepdad lives in Oregon now, but he grew up, born and raised the same town. And we used to drive around, and he would say, that Best Buy, that used to be a field that we'd ride our bikes through. And that over there used to be this. And I always thought they were cool stories, but I also knew for myself, I never wanted to live in the same place forever. I didn't want to be in the same county my whole life. So I threw my dog in the back seat, packed up a couple of things, and drove to Rochester. And I got here, and we started that first company. So we did that. The company still is in existence today. That one was successful. I was there for about 3 years, and then pivoted off of that. So that was the first company. Second company was I got my wife into real estate because she already was a salesperson for a marketing company, but did the same thing, right? She would set appointments and go on appointments and get contracts signed. So I encouraged her to get into real estate once we got more serious, and we were still dating at the time. And then when at one point I had left to really start her business together, the Jenna May team in Rochester. And that's kind of where you came in. We hired you as a coach at that time. The third company is the failure. My wife's company is massively successful still. She'll sell 150 homes a year. I'm not involved in it at all anymore. She runs it all. She does great. The third company is outside of real estate. And someone told me one time that you should always stick with what you know. And this is an example of not doing that. Right? So my best friend is a really smart person, master's of finance and an MBA, but he hated his job and he wanted to do something different. And it was into fitness and into health. And it was at the time of the beginning era of Blue Apron. And he had an idea of starting a meal kit delivery service. So he asked me, it was 4th of July. We were in the lake and he talked about it. And I said, let's do it. And almost no thought went into it. And then a couple weeks later, he freaking quit his job. So lesson number 2, right? Like don't quit too soon. So we created this meal kit delivery service called Healthy Tonight. We went and got a commercial kitchen and all this stuff and awesome packaging and the knives and the food, and had meals put together and had professional photography of the meals and recipe cards. And I say that if it were like a school project, like A++++, like we killed it. When it came time to sell it, freaking nobody bought it. I think we sold like 30, which was like, $300. So we shut it down pretty quick. And a lot came from that, but that one was a real failure.
Give us some lessons that came from that.
So the couple that come to mind the most for me is, one, do more research before you jump into something. We did almost none. No, I was young. I was making decent money. I funded a good portion of it. And I was really just supporting my friend. It wasn't, I really didn't look at it like a business. I looked at it as supporting my friend. And that was, in business, that's not a smart thing to do. You got to look at it as a company. So number 1 was that. Number 2, this is going to sound funny, but we kind of paid too much attention to the law. Where if you're going to sell food, it's got to be out of a commercial grade kitchen, right? And we went and did all that. We got approved with like health codes, and I had to get certified in food safety, all this stuff, right? And then when we sold it, nothing happened. And most of these companies that you see on Shark Tank or companies like that, they start in their dirty ass kitchen, sell to their friends until they can't keep up, and then they go and get the commercial grade kitchen. It's proof of concept before you jump all in. We didn't do that. We jumped all in, then decided or went to go see if the concept was there. So that was a major one. Some legal stuff, it's signing a lease way longer than you should have. It was a mess. It was not good. But those few right there, more research, sticking in industries that and proof of concept before you jump all in, were some of the biggest lessons that really they've shown they've come back to light in starting ClarityNOW.
Yeah. And as a business coach, that's probably one of the biggest lessons I see is the execution on an idea versus a full-fledged plan. Right? If you believe in it, you love it, you're passionate about it, that's awesome. We need all those things. Now, at least just take the time to show me the competitive edge, proof of concept. How do you know it's going to work? What else have you done before you go all in? Right?
And the devil's advocate side too. like for someone to poke a bunch of holes and show you how you're going to fail and for you to back it up. One of the biggest compliments I've had in starting ClarityNOW is, I've had to go raise money and do a couple things to get the business off the ground. And one of the biggest compliments I've had, they didn't even know they were giving me a compliment really, is they asked me a bunch of questions and I answered them all. And they said, well, you really thought this thing through, haven't you? I didn't even really acknowledge it, but I have.
You have.
I have. This one I have. You gotta think through and think with the end in mind, but think of what could go wrong.
Okay. So let's do that then. So now we've understood some successes, some lessons, some things of that nature on other businesses, right? Now you meet with JB. It's been 3 years. Or actually, no, let's go back. So you start becoming a coach, you realize that there's potentially a tool or a need that you have developed, right, to keep your clients either organized or help them maybe transition from being a real estate agent into a business owner, maybe helping with that transition, right? So you start putting it all in spreadsheets. You meet with JB, which is one of your great friends, specializes in tech that can potentially take it out of a spreadsheet and turn it into, I don't know that we would call it a business yet, but maybe like a functioning technical tool that would really help make that transformation from agent to business owner. Is that correct? Accurate a little bit?
100%. Yeah. Our mission's exactly that, transforming real estate agent into business owner. That's, as a coach, that's what, you're a coach. That's what we do, right? We teach people how to think. We show them the data that they should know. Most things in business boil down to a mathematical equation. And the challenge is, I kind of jokingly say this, but being a great agent and a great business owner are just entirely different skill sets, first and foremost. And our clients need a lot of help with not how to sell real estate, but how to be a business owner. And they're professional realtors. They're not professional spreadsheet makers. So most people that we coach in the industry, they've created spreadsheets for tracking their business, but their spreadsheets suck. It doesn't show them what they need. They don't even a lot of times know what they need. And to me, that's one of the major benefits of ClarityNOW in comparison to the couple competitors that we do have, is that ClarityNOW is developed by real estate coaches. Coaches got into tech. It's not a tech company building something for realtors without knowing what they need. And we approach the same problem of data differently because I know as a coach what real estate agents need to be better business owners.
Absolutely. I love that. So now let's go. No, let's not do that. Let's go forward first. So just give us a glimpse today. How many people in the organization? Is it a business yet? Where are you at today?
6 people in the organization.
Okay.
And we officially launched in January of this year. And the cool thing is, we're growing each month. Every single month there's more sales than prior.
And the 6 people, you got specific roles or just glimpse?
Yeah.
What's that look like?
No, yeah. In business, the org chart matters, right? Okay. So this is a cool lesson too. I don't know tech, right? We're called a SaaS company. It's software as a service, a monthly subscription business. I had to Google what SaaS was when we first started this. I didn't know it, right? I know real estate, but I don't know tech. I didn't know tech, I should say. So I've had to learn my ass off as far as how to put together a successful SaaS company. So the roles that are most important outside of, all of them, is there's the engineering team. So one of the first things we did when we raised capital is made my partner full-time. So he left his job. He's full-time, it's engineer, he's CTO. So he builds the product. Then we made a phenomenal hire, our VP of marketing, someone that knows SaaS, that came from SaaS background, that has massive track record of developing and building marketing departments from scratch. He's huge for us. And really the first person that really knows this industry, the SaaS industry. So he's a massive hire for us. So engineering builds it. marketing markets it, right? Gets people aware of it. Then we have salespeople that hold demos and get people into the product. And then after that, you need onboarding. So then we have a customer success manager who takes everybody into onboarding. One of the decisions that we made in the very beginning is a lot of people, especially in real estate, they need their handheld. They want their handheld. And a lot of tech companies do a really poor job with customer service and customer experience. So we're really committed to providing the opposite, a great experience. So, we onboard every single person, by hand. We'd schedule a demo with them, a Zoom call with them, and get all their data uploaded, et cetera. In addition to that, I have an audio engineer for these podcasts and tutorial videos. I have another marketing person that helps us on the side. And there's 3 other roles I need to hire for within those 4 divisions between now and the end of the year.
Great. So that's where it's at today, right? As of what's the date? June 17th, 2022. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So 3 years ago, we're going to go back. So 3 years ago, you got this great idea. You got these spreadsheets. Now you're meeting with who's potentially about to become your partner if he says yes. From that conversation, Jeremy, let's have a little bit of fun. Number one, did you actually think it was going to take as long as it did to get it through? You're like, hey, we just launched January 1. In your mind, was this going to be launched and become a sellable product in a month, a year? Like, give me some insight here.
So I laughed immediately, right? This is taking way longer than I thought it was going to. And you hear that in business, right? Everything's going to take 3 times longer and cost 3 times as much than what you initially think. And that is so true. I recently, just a couple of days ago, I was cleaning up my Google Drive folder because it was a mess. I had to get it organized. And I was opening up a couple of documents from a year and a half ago of like projections. And it's just comical. I just threw them in the trash. So it took a lot longer. I've also learned a ton about software and engineering and how long things take. One of the things that just blows my mind still today, I'm getting better at it, but I'll ask JB, I'll say, hey, I want you to build this. And to me, it's like, sounds super simple. Like, can you have it within the next hour? Right. And he'll tell me, okay, that's going to take like a month and a half. I'm like, what? And then there's things that feel super complex and it takes them half a day. So I've had to learn with engineering, with coding, I don't know how to code, but I understand the concept of it and how things have to be layered in the background for things to work on the front end of your computer screen. So to answer your question, it's taken way longer, at least 3 times longer than I thought it was going to.
Okay. And it's interesting that you say, like most, you hear this, right? Like you hear that it's going to take 3 times longer, or maybe cost 3 times more. I'm like, do you actually hear it, or do you just not hear? You choose not to hear it because you're so passionate about it that you believe, oh no, it's going to be different. This one's going to be different.
It's a good question. Probably a little bit of both.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, part ignorance, because again, I've never built a tech company before. So this is my first time going through this. No matter how much I know business, I've never built software, right? So a little bit of it, a lot of it is just me getting into it. And then the other part is just overly optimism. We'll get it done faster. We'll have 10,000 sales in the first month, right?
Yeah. Well, that's all right. Optimism is great for the great it can do, right? And then potentially having the other lens that says, wait a minute, time out. But here's another interesting thing that I'm listening to along the way. It's like, so if you go back and say, hey, one of the mistakes that I potentially made before was going into an industry that was different than an industry that I'm currently in, right? Like your first business, it sounded like was basically prospecting based, right?
I knew it.
That's what it was. It was basically outside sales or inside sales, but it was sales.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at this business isn't real estate though, right? Like it's not real estate and potentially not sales. It actually is different. It's solving a problem for the industry that you love and are absolutely passionate about. That's what it does. But tech is a whole new arena of knowledge and expertise. And right, am I missing something here? Or
well, the only thing I would the vertical is real estate, right? So I know what I want it to do. I know what agents need. I want my spreadsheet to be user friendly and in software. My spreadsheet was awesome. My clients, like, it's funny. They're all in ClarityNOW now. And some of them had reluctant to change because they knew the spreadsheet over years and but their admin would break it or it wasn't as visible as it should be. So I wanted my spreadsheet to be software. So I knew what I wanted. The tech side is entirely new. I have, it's funny. One mistake that I think a lot of business owners make, specifically in our industry, is they do what everyone else does when it comes to education. Right? It's,
what do you mean by that?
This book is hot. Everyone should read it. Right? So they all go out and they read the book that they're supposed to read because someone said to read it.
No, they read the book that somebody else told them to read, not what they're supposed to read, which potentially could then cause confusion because it has not even any aspect of the focus that they were actually going down. So it could cause more confusion than it can being more clear.
Completely. I'll never forget. I had a client one time in the beginning of my coaching career. She's great at social media. And family reunion was coming up, and I asked her what classes she's going to take. She goes, "Oh, there's this great Facebook class. It looks awesome." Like, why the hell are you going to that? You already know that. Right? So that's the mistake that a lot of people make. So my point in saying that is I have just completely immersed myself. Drowned myself in podcasts and books in the last 3 years on tech. And there have been so many books in our ecosystem of, hey, everyone go read this. And I just don't budge. I don't read it because it's not, I call it my educational gap. My educational gap is what I'm studying. I'm really, really crystal clear on what it is that I need to learn. And that's what I go and I execute on. I don't just follow what everyone else says to do. And right. I think way too many people make that mistake.
Yeah. I don't need to learn everything. I need to learn exactly what I need to know right now to be able to help execute and move the ball forward today.
I've even taken a step further. And just even the last couple months, I'll listen to an Audible, a book or whatever. And I used to go start to finish through the book. And now there's times where I'll start to listen to part of a chapter. And if it's not if I know it's like dead space in the book, I'll just fast forward 45 minutes and go to the next chapter. I used to sit there and listen to 45 minutes because I'm reading the whole book.
Gotcha. Yeah. Massive.
So I'm crystal clear.
The learning, right? The learning element of I need all the fat gone. Where's the muscle at that I need to learn right now that will help move this ball forward? Yeah.
Learning how to learn.
Doing it in like smaller doses of higher impact.
Yes.
Versus, right? Like you may only need one paragraph out of a chapter. You may only need one chapter out of that book. You don't need the whole thing. Get to the point and get moving now. Clarity now, baby.
And yes. And the one part of me hates seeing a book in my Audible list without the check mark that says finished. Right? Like I have a lot of books that are 3/4 read, but then I moved on to the next book because I picked up what I needed to, and I'm on to the next. But the reality is, back to the beginning of what you said in my introduction, I have 3 little kids. I have a 3-year-old boy, and I have identical twin boys that are 18 months old, and I'm married. And I have a relationship with my wife, and we have a lot going on. Between the two of us, we have, my coaching business, ClarityNOW, her business. She just became the PC coach of her office, plus 3 boys. I don't have time to waste. Right. So let's go down that path just for a minute. All right. So you're building a new company, right? Your bride has a real estate team. You have a coaching business. You love all of these things, right? Like
most of what you were building with Clarity Now was happening after the fact. It wasn't during, right? This was after hours work, not during hours work. Right. You were launching this basically out of the garage, doing it anytime that you could anytime that you could squeeze it in. Is that right?
In the beginning, not now.
Correct. That beginning stages. And then, yes. So it's interesting about the 3 years that I was going, it was coming. So 3 years is when this great idea, you have this great idea almost at the same time, the baby number one is on the way.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Baby number one. And because I do know you, I will say it. And then you have identical twins that are coming behind them. So if we look at today, going back to the whole June 17, 2022, you have 3 sons under the age of 3.5. And you're building this business and she's building that business. Now tell us the truth. What is that like?
It's hard. I mean, it's again, part of my goal and this conversation is to be transparent and honest, right? It's absolutely hard. And I've had a great role model in, really a lot of people I study, but I was going specifically towards Gary Keller. I've always believed that what makes Gary special, let's be honest. He's built a number one real estate company in the world from scratch, and he's not 140 years old, right? Like he's massively successful in a pretty short amount of time, right? And there's a lot of examples like him, and he's not the only one, obviously. But people like him, what makes them special, in my opinion, is their ability to prioritize and focus on that. And I've challenged myself all the time. So what's it like? It's really hard. And I picked this up from you, and you probably picked it up from a book somewhere, but you never tell the truth about where things come from. Is when your values are clear, decisions are easy, right? When your values are clear, decisions are easy. So I check myself constantly on what I should be doing with my time, meaning, is this work time or family time? So I think that I do a much better job than I used to. When I'm home, I'm home. I'm with the kids. I may work when they go to bed. I may, sneak away here and there to do something quick, but I'm very present when I'm home. So I had to be maximally efficient when I'm at work. One of the things that I do that I really, really attest to my ability to prioritize and focus, my favorite hour of every week outside of like family stuff is Sunday nights after the kids go to bed. My work week starts Sunday at like 9 p.m. every single week. And I pull out, I have a whole notebook dedicated to it. I organize my life in buckets. Okay. And I have my real estate business, my coaching business. I have ClarityNOW. I have the bucket of my family, investments, and whatever buckets are important to me. And then I just brain dump what are things that have to get done in all of them, just what's on my mind. And then I go through there and I treat that actually like a pipeline report, where I label them 10s and 9s or nothing at all. And a 10 means it has to get done this week. A 9 is it has to get done next week. And then on the 10s, who's responsible for those things that have to get done this week? And they're usually not all me, right? There's 10s, but for other people.
Okay.
And then I take the 10s that are me and I put it on my calendar going into the week. So when I'm working during, the hours of 8 and 5, I very, very, very rarely sit here and ask myself, what should I be doing? It's kind of like people who go to the gym, and I'm guilty of this sometimes. I go to the gym and I'm like, sweet, I'm at the gym. What should I do? Right? Like I'll do that at the gym sometimes, and the workouts aren't as effective as when I go in with a plan. But my work weeks are extremely effective because I know exactly what needs to get done because I plan it out on Sunday night every single week.
So I love that. I love it. But something caused you to start behaving that way, right? So that's the schedule that you have now that's setting you up for success to be present. But tell us about some of the sacrifices that you made, like the struggles and the sacrifices in order to actually get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, a ton. I mean, not being present for some conversations, right? It's, my wife and I are, we're both business people. So we have the nice thing about that is we understand what each other's going through when we're going through something hard. So we have a level of understanding, which is great. But there's certainly struggles there when you're sometimes thinking about other stuff, not always mentally present. And that's been a skill set I've worked on, but it wasn't always the case. Things you have to miss. I mean, there's been a bunch of those. And even now, like today, money, I choose to make about half of what I could make, truly, because I carve out my time for ClarityNOW. I'm a business coach, but I only coach, 1.5, 2 days max per week. If I chose to, I could coach 5 days a week and make a whole lot more money. And I choose to not do that. And then that has certain sacrifices in itself. It's funny. I did a Tony Robbins course during COVID, and it talked about what 2 characteristic states, I think is the way they put it, that you live in or you have lived in, and which 2 you need to live in. And one of the ones that I had lived in was in, I forgot the actual word that they use for it, but it essentially was being a risk taker, biting off more than you could chew, and, putting your family in jeopardy with certain decisions that you make because you're entrepreneurial and you think it's the right thing to do. And some of that is true in the beginning, but I've gotten to the point now through all of those failures and lessons and hard times that we have gone through of being more strategic with, making sure that I'm a family person first, but I have to kick ass when I'm at work. I know that answers your question. I mean, there's been a ton of struggles. I mean, there's been a lot. I don't know if I have a specific story for you, but the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur and starting something new and fresh, it's real.
Yeah, I congratulate you, man, because the struggles are real, right? Most of the time what we hear is we hear where the person's at now and they want to be like that person, but are you willing to go through what that person did to get to where they're at? Are you willing to do the 10 p.m. nights, the 12 p.m. nights? Are you willing to potentially sacrifice some family time in some cases, right? The mistakes that potentially could be made of I'm not present, right? Like most people don't just figure that out. They get to a place where, hey, I may be at home, but I'm not actually here, right? And you're never going to get those years back. You're not going to get them back with your bride. You're not going to get them back with your kids, right? You're not. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's where I have the benefit of having people in my life that challenge me on shit. It's really important. It's super important. It kind of like some people, I see this in real estate and also in other industries and companies as well, is they're afraid to hire people that are smarter than them or that are, appear to be more successful than they are or something because the fear of looking bad. Or not being, number one or whatever whatever story they tell themselves. I've gotten really good, and honestly, again through you and other coaches I've had before in the past too. Listen, I've been in coaching for 15 years. I embrace when people call me out because I need it. I mean, it's you need people to balance you and center you and call you out at times. So my self-awareness is only because I'm open to it and because I've practiced it for 15 years. And a lot of people don't. I mean, you're right about that. It's a lot of people just don't do that. So I'm blessed to have had have great coaches in my life and people that are willing to take a stand for me. And more people should have those people in their life.
So surrounding yourself with great people that can tell you what you want to hear, potentially not what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, right? Like protect you from or help you become more aware of what you can't see.
Yep. Perfect example of sacrifice. Okay. And also perfect example of someone calling me out. There's the group of coaches are executive coaches that we've become friends. This is going to sound crazy. My wife and I have never been on vacation together. Like, let that sink in. We've never been on vacation. We've been to places for things, right? Like we've gone here for a wedding or there because of that. But we have never just unplugged and gone on vacation. And a couple weeks ago, in a call I was on, some coaches called me out on that. And they said, that's ridiculous. And they said, you better have a vacation booked by next week. And I respect these people and they're friends of mine and they're right. So I booked one. So we're going to, we're taking our kids to the beach for the first time in their life in about a month. It's just stuff like that. It's the sacrifice of not going on vacations and things like that, but also the people in your life to call you out. Because it's one of the things I love about my new VP of marketing is the other day we had our one-on-one, and at the end of the one-on-one, I went to go end it because in my mind we were done with the one-on-one, right? We talked about what we needed to, and I thought we were good. And as I was wrapping it up, he goes, well, just 2 or 3 more minutes. I know you're busy. I'm like, oh, well, sorry. I didn't know that you needed more. What's up? And he goes, how are you? I love him for that. It's really important. You're not going to run a good business if you're not taking care of yourself. So that is something that I continuously work on and need to get better at in full transparency. But you have to take care of you in order to run a good business.
Absolutely. Right. Business.
Maybe that's not even entirely true. You can run a good business and not take care of yourself. But one of my favorite quotes is from Tony Robbins. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So I can run a good business, but I probably won't be fulfilled. And what's the point?
Yep. So you learn how to be more purposeful. You've gotten your head wrapped around your schedule, right? And the time that you actually have is like all work expands to fill the time allowed. And I see it a lot, right? Like the difference between efficiency and effectiveness could be efficiency is I got 13 things and I'm going to nail them all. And this person nails all of them. They're super efficient. They get them all done. I love that. Problem is it's not the most effective thing that you should be doing. So shifting from efficiency to effectiveness of like what actually matters most, what's going to move the ball forward, right? Like that's a huge difference. No different than like, hey, I'm there, but I'm not present. Okay. Well, you don't need to be, if you're going to show up there, just be present for the 30 minutes. Give them everything that you've got. Turn everything else off. I see those mistakes all the time. It's just go, 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 go. I'm like, did you even hear what they said? Did you even take the time to listen? So up until this point, Jeremy, so if we recap like some of these lessons from the time that you took your idea, one, you take this idea that you're passionate about, you're solving a problem that potentially hadn't been solved yet, right?
It hadn't been solved in the way that it should be.
In the way that was coming through either one, the agent's eyes themselves, or two, the coaches of the agent's eyes that help create a dashboard and or the data that needs to be focused on to help you make great decisions.
And that's only step one. I mean, there's a couple of things I like to mention because again, this is about building a business. Mm-hmm. One is having a vision. Like you have to have the vision. If you want good people, you have to have the vision. I'll use my VP of marketing again. This guy's good. He's could go anywhere and work. And the fact that he came to work with me to build this isn't because of me. It's because of the vision that I had in creating the opportunity and showing what this can become in a way that has been thought through and is translated in a way that other people can understand. Right. So that is really, really, really important. You will not bring on top-notch talent if you don't have a good vision or a clear vision, if it's not big enough, or if you don't know how to translate it, how to make it clear. Second thing is people. That's a huge one that we talked about a little bit, but not head on. I will not build this company. I will not. What my job right now, the last 6 months and the next, forever, is to continuously to build a great team where the team can then build the company. Right? Like I don't know marketing. When I was interviewing my marketing guy, I couldn't interview him at all on tactical work. I have no clue. Right? It was about casting the vision. Do you like it? Cool. Do you want to talk? And spending time there. And then it's about culture. Should we work together? Do you want to work together? Where do you suck? Here's how I suck. Like, are we cool with how we both suck? Yeah. It's all of that. It's building a great team. And too many people, it goes back to the comment of being nervous to hire top talent. For whatever reason it is, that's why they're capped. You got to build a great team. And the third thing, and you could go deeper on any of these if you choose to, and there's probably more than this, but the third thing is I've never respected the foundational work of a business more than I have in building ClarityNOW. And by foundational work, it's the business planning part of it, but like the values. What do we stand for? What's actually important to us? Like, values matter. And the thing with values, I see this as a coach. It's actually been kind of a hot take of mine with my coaching clients the last, couple months. This is going to sound too blunt, but this is just the way that I talk. Most people's values suck. And I say that because it's about like hugging each other and like togetherness, and like where in your values is execution, is winning, is results. And I see too many values that are fluffy. And yes, that stuff's important, but ClarityNOW, just as an example, one of our core values is not to have fun. Like, having fun will happen because we care about each other and because we're good people and because we have a strong culture. But our values are professional development, like staying committed and just fanatical about developing ourselves professionally. It's about execution. We talk about execution a ton. We have to execute every single week, especially when you're a startup, right? So the foundational work of like, what do we stand for? That's, as a CEO, as a founder, that's mine to create. And it's really, really, really important in starting a company.
Yeah. And what's cool about that, Herman, is maybe it's because you're starting something that you actually don't know some of these things. Like, maybe that's the gift that's happened here, because you're kind of like, if you really want to do this, you have no choice at this point than to put people in place that absolutely know how to execute in each of these departments, because you're not the one to teach them how to do it.
Right.
You're the one that's going to hold them accountable to getting a result. That is different than being able to teach them how to do something. You have no choice. You don't know how to do it. You got to put people in place in each of these departments that are already great at execution. They already know how to do it.
Bingo. Not to mention, it's part of not having a choice. I haven't raised a ton of money in terms of like millions and millions and millions of dollars, like some tech companies do at the gates. And we're being strategic in our growth and in our capital. But the capital that I have raised, it's largely from family and friends and clients. Like, I take that seriously. Right. So it's, I hear this, I've heard this on Shark Tank before, and I never really heard it until I did it. But raising capital is not an accomplishment. It's a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, there is no choice. We will win.
Yeah. And, yes, we all have choices, right? At this moment in time, you're either going to choose to put the right people in place and go faster, or put the wrong people in place and not move at all. Right.
And I did. I had one so far out of the 6 hires, I made one bad one. And great person. It's not about like the person. The person was phenomenal. I loved the person, but they were a bad hire for the role. And I had to respond quick because we don't have time to beat our head against the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those are other sacrifices too, right? Like when you look at sacrifice, you sacrifice the fact of like, hey, if you're raising capital, then that probably means that you may be owning less of an organization, or you're giving something to go up, right? You're constantly giving something to go up. You're constantly making decisions about where you will be in the future, not necessarily capitalizing on today.
Correct.
Right. Those investments. And so those are choices. You had a choice to you got to a place where, well, I don't raise capital and this thing takes the next, what I thought was going to take 3 months, maybe took 3 years. And if I don't raise capital, it may take 30 years and the product will be, we won't need that product by then.
Yep.
Right. Those are all sacrifices. Those are all decisions along the way.
And decisions that a lot of people in real estate, again, transforming agents into business owners, and why, this podcast exists and why a lot of the things in the roadmap are going to happen outside of just the software, is to continue to educate people and make them better business owners. And one of the things that I see a lot in real estate is people not thinking of their business that way, of what capital sacrifices, as in like choosing to net less money, do I need to make in order for growth?
Yeah. Well,
otherwise, I'm willing to make $100,000 less the next year and reinvest $100,000 into X, Y, and Z, because in 2 years I should do this. A lot of agents aren't thinking that way, and now they really should.
Yes. And it has to do, when you brought up the whole people element, that's one of the mistakes I see as well. The minute that you look at as a hire or a person as an expense versus an investment, it automatically puts a lid on your organization, right? Like if it's an investment, you look through a completely different lens. And yeah, big mistake I see.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. So any other lessons that you want to share that would be powerful or helpful to the people that are listening?
I'm sure there are. Off the top of my head, I think we did a great job covering it. At least I hope we did a great job. The audience, I'm sure, will tell us. But yeah, it's just starting a business is hard, especially one that you don't know about, and you got to dive into the education. Education is so important. People are so important. Vision's important. Foundation's important. And sacrifice is important.
Yeah, it's one thing to know here's exactly what I want to go after, but without being clear on what you're willing to sacrifice to get it is going to potentially cause a lot of struggles, right? If you know what you're willing to sacrifice, you know what you're willing to give up to go up, it will make it easier. But most people don't spend time getting clarity on those things. Who are the people that can help me get there? Who are the coaches? Who are the mentors? Who are those people? What's the one focus that I need to focus on, that I need to pay attention to that will help move the ball forward? Paying attention to effectiveness versus efficiencies, paying attention to being present versus just being there, right? Like those are massive lessons. Jeremy, let's be honest, man. You think I intentionally decided not to have hair, right? Like, yes, I go a lot faster because I don't have hair, but these are all the lessons and mistakes that I've made up until this point, right? So it's being on to be able to interview you and be able to, like, it's real, man. I mean, nobody gets anywhere they want, like anywhere, without that struggle. The struggle is the fulfillment, though. That's the fun. That should be the fun part, figuring it out along the way. It's the journey, not the destination.
100%. 100%. It's lessons are only learned when you slow down to reflect, right? And reflecting is really, really important. And reflecting on the bad, but also the good. Like how much further we've come, how much better are we today than we were 6 months ago, and being proud of that. And sure, it's almost never how far you want to be in a lot of times. Right? Like I wish we were at fill in the blank or whatever the metric you're using, but still being grateful for where you've come. It's really important.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because without reflection, it's really tough to see progress, right? Like reflection is where we don't learn necessarily from the actions that we do. We learn from reflecting on the actions that we did.
Yes.
Right? So build that plan, then you execute on the plan, then you reflect on what you executed on, make tiny tweaks if necessary, and then you just rinse and repeat. But without reflection, not a lot of learning.
Bingo.
Yeah, I love it, man. This is great.
Thank you.
Let's wrap this up with some fun, even though I've been having fun this whole time. I mean, how about a TV show?
Thanks,
how about a TV show, man? A TV show or a movie that you're watching?
TV show. So there's a show called Succession on Netflix that not on Netflix, it's on HBO Max that I just finished up. And it's about a media business mogul who's got a handful of kids and which one's going to step in next. It was pretty cool.
Awesome. How about a book? You got a book that maybe one book that's made the biggest impact on your career?
I mean, that's a tough question, right? Because there's so many. When I think about this, I think specifically about ClarityNOW, and there's been a bunch. There's I'll give a couple really quick. One is the Startup J Curve. I like that quite a bit. That was one of the first books that helped me understand just the whole process of starting a tech company. Another one I really liked, I'm going back to now, is called Blitzscaling. And it's by Reid Hoffman, who is the owner and founder of LinkedIn. And he's phenomenal. If anyone hasn't listened to Reid Hoffman, he has a podcast also. So many great business lessons in his podcast.
Got it. How about if you could go back, Jeremy? You can go back to when, I don't know, you're 20. You're 20 years old. What advice would you give yourself?
I think about my kids in this one. Like what advantage do I want my kids to have that maybe I didn't, or knowledge or education do I want them to have that I didn't? And really it's about money and credit. I don't think money and credit is talked about enough in school. I think that's probably a pretty obvious statement. And my parents are phenomenal, but I didn't grow up with lessons about credit and money. And I screwed that stuff up in my 20s. So if I could go back, it would be to have a better understanding of how important that is, especially in a startup. You know, a lot of times raising money and getting credit cards for things is just part of the process. And if you can't get them, it just makes your life harder. Got it.
So studying and understanding money, if you could go back 20 years ago, just making that a purposeful focus.
Yes.
How about a CEO? Is there like a CEO or head of an organization that you study the most?
I hate that I'm giving you two again, but two. One is Daniel Ek. He's the CEO of Spotify. I just think he's an awesome CEO. If anyone's interested, the Tim Ferriss podcast, he interviewed Daniel Ek, like episode 450 or 460, something like that, in between 400 and 500. It's awesome. I listened to it a couple times. So Daniel Ek is great. The other one I really like, he's a newer one that I like, is Drew Houston, and he's the CEO of Dropbox. And to me, he is an absolute model of how he got to where he is through education. just devours books.
Gotcha. All right. How about, so you've been in this career or this profession of real estate for a long time now, right?
17 years.
17 years. So if there was any other profession that you could choose, what would it be?
Outside of a CEO tech founder, I would say, I mean, how cool would it be to get paid millions of dollars a year to travel the world and play golf? That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I would need a better skill set, but if I can choose, that would be so cool.
Great, man. I appreciate your time. I
appreciate you.
Learned a lot. Appreciate you. Thankful for sharing. Glad I've been a part of this journey with you.
I'm grateful for you, man. Thank you so much. Thank you for this. I hope people got value out of this. And truly, that when we went through the luck of the draw of who our coach was going to be, 5 years ago, a lot of things could have been different in my life if a different name showed up as our coach. So we're very, very grateful for you. So thank you.
I appreciate that.